Hi class, I'm Michaela Browner, a junior psychology major from Stone Mountain, Georgia, residing in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. I will be doing part 2 of chapter 9, Terman's 1916 Stanford Binet Intelligence Scale. So on the next slide, slide 17, is talking about the IQ, the intelligence quotient. Stern, he proposed that formula in 1912 for calculating IQs. IQs were calculated as a ratio of one's mental age to his or her chronicle age. So what that is basically like when we see like examples or whatever of IQs, it's basically like it has something to do like your age, what you know, and stuff like that. And so basically, when one's MA, mental age, and CA, chronicle age, our equivalent IQ comes to 100. So that represents like an average IQ. And then with that, lower IQs, the lower they are, that's how like you getting older, basically. Slide 18 talking about the 1937 scale. So in that scale, it extended age range down to 2-year-old levels. So you could be at the age of 2. That's where that scale age requires. And it increased maximum possible mental age up to 22 years old, 10 months, or within the range of 10 months. Scoring standards and instructions were improved during that scale. Standardization symbols were improved as well. And they had alternative equivalent forms, L and M, which were designed. And the problems that with the 1937 scale were the reliability coefficients that were not equal for different ages. And then the different age groups and the standardization samples that produce unique deviation IQ scores as well. And in our textbook, in figure 9.5, it's sort of like a layout of the summary of the evolution of the 1937 Binet scale. So it starts off with the whole 1937 scale, then it breaks out into categories as retained, general improvements, psychometric properties, and then breaking those down in the retain, it has like the ages. So age scale formats, age differentiations, IQ, general mental ability, and then when you get to general improvements, like we improve those with the extended age range and then the mental age range increase. So basically everything that's positive, like the general improvements of those. And then one little section that was like had a part of the 1937 scale was marked improved standardization samples. So those were like the ones added in an alternative equivalent form as well. And then you have the psychometric properties, which those are broken down in their own subtitles, as well as reliability, which reliability, generally is excellent but varies as a function of age and IQ level, and less reliable at a younger age ranges in higher IQ levels. So younger, higher, basically like that. And then we have the validity, generally supported by correlation studies and factor studies, analytic studies. On the next slide, it's talking about the 1960 Stanford Binet Revision and Deviation IQ, so SBLM. They tried combining them because those was the best forms of that time. So they tried combining them, the forms of the 1937 scales. The tasks were selected based on earlier qualities, based on like best qualities in the earlier editions. They were used deviation IQ, so like the meaning of 100, SD of 16. New IQ tables reflected performance on scores, age, and percentiles. So with that, the new IQ tables, they had like the scores, ages, and percentiles. They were reflected on the like good, like a certain performance, like whether the performance was good, whether the performance was bad, just etc. And they did not have new standardization samples, but one was created in 1972. And another revised revisions were created, well, or attempted, I would say, in the 1987s and 2003 for further improvements because they tried to improve them within a year span. The 1960 Stanford Binet Revision and Deviation IQ SBLM in our textbook also has a figure of how it's broken down. Figure 9.6 is a broken down revision of the 1960 Binet scale. Basically, what I repeated earlier, but with different like content or whatever. Um, Next slide, the modern Binet scale model for the fourth and fifth editions. Those continue use of psychometric and theoretical concepts. They went beyond Sherman G's model and incorporated the GFGC model. G is always at the top of the model. So, second level had three components. Excuse me. One was crystallized abilities, two fluid and analytic abilities, and three short-term memories. And the role of Thurston's multi-dimensional model, primary mental ability, were primary mental abilities. Characteristics of the 1986 revision attempted to retain strengths and reduce weaknesses of earlier editions. So it was showing basic like some strengths and weaknesses of the attempt they tried for the new revision of the 1986 scale. And then age scale format, they eliminated that, so they took that off. And separate tests with some similar items were created. So they revised it in 1986. So they eliminated the age scale format because it basically like didn't matter your age as long as you getting the concept done, what needs to be done. So the characteristics of the 2003 fifth edition, it integrated more of the age scale and point scale measures. So just because they limited, you could still use it in another way. So I guess they integrated it back from after eliminating it. And verbal and nonverbal routing measures as well. So they started points, basal, and ceiling. So 2003 fifth edition, it uses a hybrid of point and age scales, and it has an equal balance of nonverbal and verbal items. And it has 5 factor plus nonverbal IQ, verbal IQ, and full scale IQ. And they use a standard deviation for 15 for IQ and factor scores. And psychometric properties of the 2003 fifth edition, standard deviation changed to 15 while mean of 100 retained. So it changed, but the 100 stayed. In the age range, how it went from 2 to 22, it went up to 85 plus years now. And standardized sample again increased in more diverse. At first, it wasn't diverse. That was the problem. But now, as the years got older, more things changed. And reliability, is quite good now. From back then, it wasn't so good. In some research challenges, the claim that the fifth edition measures 5 distinct factors, but some researchers have their own opinions, and some researchers are different. So it just depends. So that was all of my slides for my part of chapter 9. I hope I did good. I hope I gave what I was supposed to give, information.